The room was silent, save for the hum of the air conditioning and the sharp ticking of the clock on the wall. On the massive mahogany desk sat a document that could change the skyline of the city forever. It was worth millions, perhaps hundreds of millions of dollars. Mr. Smit stared at the fountain pen resting beside the papers. He was known across the business world for one thing: efficiency. People said he didn't just sign contracts, he signed destinies. His signature meant life for some businesses and death for others. Today, this specific deal meant the demolition of an entire low-income neighborhood to build a luxury corporate tower. It was a necessary sacrifice, they said. Progress always comes with a cost. Mr. Smit lifted the pen, ready to make the ink permanent. But then a small voice, trembling with fear yet filled with hope, cut through the silence like a knife. "Daddy, please don't sign that. My friends and I play there every day." Every head in the room turned instantly. The silence that followed was heavier than before. Mr. Smit froze, the pen hovering inches above the paper. He looked down, confused. He wasn't a father. He had spent his entire life building empires, never families. He wasn't sure why the new maid's daughter was calling him that, or even how she had gotten into his private office. Just a few weeks earlier, his old housekeeper had fallen critically ill and was admitted to the hospital. The agency scrambled to find a replacement quickly. When Maya arrived, she wasn't alone. She came with a little girl holding onto her dress tightly. "Sir, this is my daughter, Nova," Maya had explained nervously, wringing her hands. "Her school is on break and I couldn't leave her alone at home. I promise she will be invisible, sir. She won't disturb you." Mr. Smit had reluctantly agreed, his eyes cold. "But keep her out of my office," he warned sternly. In his world, children were seen as chaos, noise, distractions from the serious work of generating wealth. He didn't even bother asking the girl's name before walking away to check his stocks. But as he turned to leave that first day, he caught a quick glimpse of Nova's face. She was smiling. It wasn't the fake smile he saw every day in boardrooms where people smiled only to get what they wanted. It was simple, innocent, bright, and genuine. Days passed, and something strange began to shift in the atmosphere of the mansion. Maya did her job diligently. The house was always spotless whenever Mr. Smit returned home from the stressful meetings, but soon he started noticing things. Sometimes he would find drawings of a happy family scattered across the kitchen floor, clearly drawn by a child using colorful crayons. Other times he would find similar sketches on the hood of his expensive sports car. Each time Maya would rush over, tears forming in her eyes. "I'm so sorry, sir." Nova didn't mean to. She would quickly try to wipe the drawings away with a rag, embarrassed beyond belief. But Mr. Smit simply waved his hand and said, "It's fine." And every time he said that, Maya looked surprised because the cold billionaire she had heard rumors about didn't seem like the kind of man who would tolerate crayon stains on his luxury vehicle. Before we continue with how this one little girl changed everything for this millionaire, please take a moment right now to show your support. If you believe that kindness is the most powerful currency in the world, hit that like button, leave a comment below sharing your thoughts. And make sure you subscribe to Kindness Valley so you never miss a story that inspires the heart. We appreciate you being here with us. Something was slowly shifting inside Mr. Smit, although at first he didn't notice it himself. But slowly he began coming home earlier than usual. Sometimes he would pause in the kitchen and quietly smile when he saw Nova sitting beside the coffee machine, painting on sheets of paper spread across the floor. One evening, tired from a long week, he finally spoke first. "Who taught you how to draw?" he asked softly. Nova looked up and smiled brightly. "My mom," she replied proudly. Maya turned slightly from where she was cleaning and gave a shy, grateful smile. Nova quickly added, "I can teach you if you want." Mr. Smit chuckled softly, a sound he hadn't made in years. "Your name is Nova, right?" he asked. "Yes," she said, tilting her head curiously. "But how do you know that? I never told you my name." "No," he replied calmly. "But I've heard your mother call you a couple of times." He leaned slightly against the counter. "And you should really be in big trouble for drawing on my cars and walls." Nova's face immediately dropped in fear, her lip trembling. But Mr. Smit continued gently. "However, if you promise to draw something new for me every day, I'll forgive you." Nova became shy, but after a moment she nodded. "Okay." And just like that, a strange but beautiful friendship was formed. From that day on, Nova often sat on the floor inside Mr. Smit's office, drawing quietly while he worked behind his large desk. Sometimes he would glance down at her drawings and smile without realizing it. For the first time in many years, his office didn't feel so cold or empty. Mr. Smit even began finding excuses to return home early and started working from home more often. He found the silence of the house without her laughter was louder than any business meeting. But one afternoon, everything changed. Nova was quietly drawing in the corner of the office when she overheard a hushed conversation between Mr. Smit and one of his senior business partners. They were discussing a large property deal. "We've already prepared everything," the partner said excitedly. "Once the papers are signed, we'll demolish the entire area and begin construction next month." "And the people living there?" Mr. Smit had asked casually. "Their deadline expired weeks ago," the man replied coldly. "They'll be forced to leave." Nova slowly lifted her head, her pencil stopping mid-stroke. After the meeting ended, Mr. Smit stepped out of the office with his partners to discuss something urgent in the hallway. Curious and sensing danger, Nova carefully walked toward the desk. The documents were still there, neatly stacked. She slowly opened them, not understanding the business jargon but recognizing the pictures. Attached to the papers were images of houses, streets, playgrounds, her home, her neighborhood, the place where she and her friends played every day. Her heart began to race. Suddenly she heard footsteps returning. Nova quickly rushed back to the floor and pretended to draw. Mr. Smit walked back in with his business partners, while Maya followed behind them carrying a bottle of wine to celebrate the closing of the deal. Mr. Smit returned to his seat. He picked up the pen again. The room was silent as he leaned forward, ready to sign the contract that would erase their existence. But just before the pen touched the paper, Nova suddenly shouted, "Daddy, please don't sign that." Everyone in the room froze completely. "My friends and I live there and we play there every day." Mr. Smit's pen stopped in midair. The entire room froze again. His business partners slowly turned their heads toward the small girl sitting on the floor, shocked by her audacity. "Dad, please don't sign that," Nova repeated softly, her voice shaking. "My friends and I live there and we play there every day." Mr. Smit stared at her in confusion. "Did she just call you Dad?" One of the partners whispered loudly. Maya almost dropped the bottle of wine she was holding. "Nova," she said nervously, rushing forward. "I'm so sorry, sir. She didn't mean—" But Mr. Smit raised his hand, stopping her. He looked down at the papers again, then back at Nova. "You live there?" he asked quietly. Nova nodded. "That's our house. My friends live there, too. We play in the small field near the big tree." For the first time since the meeting began, Mr. Smit really looked at the photos attached to the contract. He had seen thousands of properties in his life. To him, they were always just land, numbers, investments, percentages on a graph. But now, those pictures were suddenly different. He could almost imagine Nova running through those streets with her friends. He could hear the sound of laughter, children playing tag, homes filled with families cooking dinner. The room remained silent. Slowly, Mr. Smit placed the pen down on the desk with a loud thud. "I need to see this place myself," he said firmly. His partners looked confused and annoyed. "But the demolition team is already scheduled," one of them argued. Mr. Smit shook his head, his eyes hard. "No signature, not yet." Later that evening, Mr. Smit asked Maya and Nova to take him to their neighborhood. At first, Maya was nervous. "Sir, it's not a place someone like you would normally visit," she said quietly. "That's exactly why I should see it," he replied firmly. When they arrived, the streets were simple and lively. Children were running around everywhere. Neighbors were sitting outside their homes, talking, laughing, enjoying the evening breeze. As soon as Nova stepped out of the car, she ran toward a group of kids playing nearby. "Nova." They shouted happily. Mr. Smit stood there watching from the sidewalk. Nova laughed as she chased her friends across the small, dusty field. Some of the children were playing football with a worn-out ball that had lost its shine. Others were drawing on the ground with sticks. They looked happy, truly happy. Not the forced smiles he saw every day in expensive boardrooms where everyone was fighting for a bonus. One small boy suddenly kicked the ball too hard, and it rolled toward Mr. Smit's polished shoes. He bent down, ignoring the dirt staining his suit, picked it up and gently kicked it back. The children cheered. Mr. Smit looked around the neighborhood again. Yes, the houses were old. The roofs were leaking. The roads were rough and cracked, but this place wasn't just land waiting to be destroyed. It was home. It was a community. He suddenly remembered Nova's drawings of happy families scattered around his kitchen floor. He realized he had been so focused on building skyscrapers that he forgot how to build homes. For the first time in many years, Mr. Smit felt something he hadn't felt in a long time: responsibility. The next morning, his partners gathered in his office again, expecting him to finally sign the contract. They were angry, believing he had gone soft. Instead, Mr. Smit pushed the papers aside with a confident sweep of his hand. "We're moving the project," he said calmly. "What?" one of the men exclaimed, standing up. "That land is not for demolition anymore." "But we've invested millions in this plan," the other argued. Mr. Smit leaned back in his chair, crossing his arms. "And we'll invest millions somewhere else." The room was silent. Then he added, "Instead of destroying that neighborhood, we're going to improve it." His partners stared at him in disbelief. "We'll rebuild the roads, create a proper playground for the children, renovate the houses, and provide better facilities for the families." "But why?" someone asked finally, unable to comprehend the logic. Mr. Smit looked toward the corner of his office where Nova was quietly drawing again. "Because businesses should build communities, not destroy them. If we tear down happiness to build concrete, what have we actually built?" Months later, Nova's neighborhood looked completely different. The dusty field had been turned into a beautiful playground with swings and slides. The houses were repaired with fresh paint, the streets were paved safely, and the community was thriving. It was no longer an eyesore, it was a jewel. One afternoon, Nova proudly showed Mr. Smit a new drawing. It showed a big house, a playground, children playing, and 3 people holding hands: a man, a woman, and a little girl. At the top of the drawing, she had written 3 simple words in capital letters: "My family, Mr." Smit smiled softly, because sometimes the greatest success in life is not the contracts you sign, but the lives you choose to protect. He looked at Maya, who was crying tears of joy. "You see, Maya," he said, "it wasn't the money that saved me, it was her." Moral of the story: true wealth is not measured by money or power, but by the kindness we show and the lives we choose to uplift. Sometimes listening to the smallest voice can lead to the biggest change. If this story has moved you today, please remember that your actions matter. Hit that like button, share this video with someone who needs to hear this message, leave a comment supporting kindness, and subscribe to Kindness Valley for more stories that heal the soul. Thank you for watching.